I'm saying back it up from the pipeline. Where does it originate from, and how did it get to be?
So, petroleum in the U.S., oil, gasoline, diesel, natural gas, for the most part, is a combined network system. So, oil and other products go in, and they come out. And you can't buy gas from one place or another. It all comes from the same system. So the gas for your cars, all that stuff all comes from a network system.
So it could be fracked in North Dakota, it could be coming from tar sands, it could be coming from Saudi Arabia.
It could be coming from Texas, it could be coming from
Texas,
the Gulf.
It could be fracked in Louisiana. So, but it's, you know.
So the bulk, so I mean, we're not trying to hide that in the U.S., the bulk petroleum right now comes from the systems that, or the wells that use fracking technology. That's how it works. I mean, we're not trying to get around to that. And we're buying those products from the market. Yeah.
So somebody asked a question about whether you've explored and whether it's feasible to have a renewable source of energy instead of the gas-fired power plant feeding this. And you blipped over it very quickly. You just said, oh, it's not feasible. Could you address that?
Sure.
Because I think that's of interest to some of us.
So to do what we're trying to do, so the project objectives, like I talked about before, were to provide capacity, frequency regulation, spinning reserves, and the ability to operate a microgrid. Those are the four, in the back there, those are the four primary services. To do that, you have, all of those are, I'm not going to use the nicer term, but all of those are kind of safety net services. So there are services that when you're providing those services, you have to be able to do it when you're asked to do it, no matter what. And so we think, or we know, the amount of batteries you have to do to use a renewable system to do that is significantly more than we think is economic to build today at this site. So right now, so I think our business is somewhat predicated on the fact that in the future, 5, 10, 15 years in the future, battery technology may advance, costs will come down, and you'll be able to do this with all batteries. I don't think we're trying to say that's not going to happen. What we're saying is today, the economic way to do this and still meet the requirements of the grid operator is the system we're proposing. Sorry, did that answer your question? Because I think before you said I glossed over it. Does that, I mean, it's the answer you want, does that answer it thoroughly?
It begins to.
Okay, sorry.
Follow up on that. New York State has a new storage mandate.
That's right.
Our understanding, and I don't think they've clarified that, is that this project would not qualify for that storage mandate because it's not a pure storage project. It's this hybrid system.
So you're right, the rules haven't been clarified, but currently in the law, this project would qualify.
So are you seeking incentives under that program? Is that part of what's making this cost effective?
So right now, we don't think we're required, we don't think those incentives are required for the project to work.
I'm just curious, I mean, if New York thinks that that pure storage projects are going to be built in response to that incentive, why you can't be one of those projects here?
So I don't know, so the rules haven't been clarified. I don't know if the intent of that law is only for pure storage projects. I think projects like this are part of what they're thinking is going to happen. I mean, the rules haven't come up, but I think that's from what we've heard and we've read that they're looking at a whole bunch of energy storage. Some of it will be standalone, some will be paired with solar or wind, and some will be paired with thermal generation.
And so when you say that a pure standalone storage project wouldn't be feasible at this site, do you think that that mandate is not going to produce any pure storage projects?
No, I think it will.
Because they're not cost effective anywhere. Is there something special about this site?
I think pure storage today, if you're to build pure storage today, which others have done, it's been in more dense areas where there isn't the land available or isn't air, the air permitting doesn't allow for additional thermal generation.
So it's because this is not a densely populated, high-load area that you can build an air-emitting project here.
It complies with the regulations for this area, that's right. Yeah, you have your question.
I'm just going to throw it out to the community here. See a lot of customers of mine. I run solar generation out of Kingston, New York. I wouldn't be opposed to buying land and building a 20, 75 megawatt solar farm, going green and giving a battery solution to it. Just think about it. I'll keep it close.
Excuse me, what's the life expectancy on these batteries
when these batteries do expire, or if they say so malfunction, how do you dispose of these batteries? We all know household batteries are specific with the instructions, talking about a much larger battery.
Yeah, so 2 questions there. The life of the batteries. So the life of the project is, so there's 2 components. I'm going to answer 2 different answers, related but different. So the life of the bulk of the project, the civil infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure, the transformers, those sorts of things, the engines, are the 20 to 30 year life. The battery modules themselves have a shorter life. We think the manufacturers right now are projecting a 10-year life before you have to start replacing cells. And you're right, these aren't alkaline batteries, so they're not like a Duracell battery. They're a different technology with lithium ion. They're like the batteries in a cell phone, laptop, those sort of things. They're not landfillable batteries, but there are recycling programs that exist, and manufacturers who make these systems have recycling programs that allow you to send the batteries back and recycle them, and I assume that part of our permit will require us to dispose of them properly.
So you'll have somebody manning this 24 hours a day to be sure that they're not malfunctioning, or leaking?
No, they'll be electronically monitored, and yeah, it won't be 24 hours a day.
So
we can get a lot of information.
monitoring that on that?
So there'll be a system of automated alarms. So if they deviate from where they're supposed to be, there'll be alarms that go off at our control center.
We're going to hear them. It's pretty loud. You know, if an alarm goes off in our neighborhood, it's pretty.
Sorry, I misspoke. So it'll send an alarm message. So there won't be an audible alarm. It'll alert our operators that there is a problem, and depending on what the problem is, they'll react. Whether it's turning
You're
music
going to
down.
send somebody from Minnesota or Chicago immediately to the site.
So no, what we'll do is we'll shut down that part of the facility.
And not notify us.
Yeah, fail safe.
Okay, moving on. So here's the site itself, and here are the kind of the major components. So we have the engine system. It's located here. It'll be in a building that's industrial. You know, it'll fit into the surroundings. So it'll be a green or brown colored building. Well, it is metal clad building. It'll be insulated to prevent noise from escaping from the building, and it'll be about 30 feet tall. And then that'll be the engine systems. There'll be a small control room for people when they're on site to operate the facility. We'll have maintenance and offices, that sort of thing. Over here we'll have our exhaust system, which others have pointed out. Right now we're forecasting it'd be a single stack system, so one stack with kind of two pipes in it, and that'll be anywhere from 60 to 80 feet tall. 60 to 80 feet tall. We're still working through the details of that, but that's what we're currently forecasting. That's the engine system.
What about the fire water storage tank? What's that?
That's the
fire water storage tank?
Yes.
What's that for?
Fire water.
Meaning?
So we will store. So we'll have a water supply.
Right.
But we will also have water on site in case that water supply isn't sufficient.
Sufficient for what?
So there's a fire.
Oh, so you have to really be set up for the potential of a fire.
Yeah, we want to make sure that there's multiple ways to fight a fire on the site. Okay. We're not just relying on the hydrants.
Okay.
Right.
And after that water comes down or out or wherever, where does it go after that? Does it seep into our ground?
The fire water?
Yeah.
I guess we can. I don't know. It'll be part of our. We'll look at it as part of our stormwater plan. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Hey, so that's a great question. I mean, I can make an answer if you want, but I don't know. We'll look into it though.
And will there be a person on site all times?
No.
Not even employees?
So how many employees will this employ, not including
Four.
construction?
Four.
Full-time?
Yep, 4 FTEs. Yep. So over here we have the battery system, 9 to 11 containers. Like we showed there, a drill pad and some inverters that convert the batteries from AC to DC or DC to AC and back again. And they'll be all connected. This will be connected together underground with some cabling. And then these are the kind of support facilities. So the electrical connection between these two systems combined here at the grid connection site, and that's where we connect to the Central Hudson electric grid system. Over here is where the gas supply will come into the site and be metered into the site. And here is the backup fuel with its containment system.
Can you just back up a second? You said something about the Central Hudson grid system.
Yes.
You happen to be running parallel to the Central Hudson grid system main that goes through Ulster County. Where did that have any bearing on where your project is?
Yes, that is exactly one of the reasons why we chose the site.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so that is the site. Now we're backing up a little bit. Yeah, questions?
Where's the
Yes.
gate? What street is the gate on?
I have a map and a few slides of a larger zoomed out, and I'll show you there. Is that all right? Okay.
Yes. Peter, this is a question about the site. I think if we were to have this, and I think it's pretty clear from everyone here that we don't want that, and you've made a business decision that you could really compete in this market. Gentleman back there says he could compete with solar and backup. I certainly would like to hear that. That sounds very favorable. But anyway, you're going to be purchasing 121 acres, putting 3 parcels together, and using 4 of them in the middle of the woods, coming in from Frank Sotile Boulevard.
Yep.
And I know you say this is off Frank Sotile Boulevard. It's actually off of Risley Road. It's closer to Risley Road.
That's right.
We wouldn't go through Risley Road because it goes through a residential area. The 4 acres, as I reading the environmental assessment form, is in both OM, Office of Manufacturing, and residential.
Yes.
So it's in both. How could it be in both? In other words, in residential and have a commercial purpose? That's number one. Second is where I'm wondering what happens to the other 117 acres. Very concerned about that. The other is, and it come up here, is a question of safety. And I think you said you have this water tank and so forth. If there was an external threat, you have an unmanned facility. You have 4 FTEs, but it's going to be mostly unmanned. If there is an external threat, like a fire within this forest, which this is in the middle, this could be really quite catastrophic before it even gets to this facility. I think we would oppose this if this were on even the east side of Frank Sotile Boulevard.
Yep.
You know, we don't like the idea. This really makes no sense to me from a safety perspective. I can't see how our local firefighters or police, either this is vandalism, accident, forest fire, in the middle of that, of course, which affects the people who are closest to this. These are the neighbors on Risley and Ledge Road, which many of us are living. We're not a bunch of dyspeptic NIMBYs. We would oppose this no matter where it is, even if it were on the east side. But you chose this because it's convenient to you from a business perspective. I get it. It's near the gas, it's near the power lines. If you want to cross, you could still get to it. You know, if you were on the other side of Sotile Boulevard, we still think that would be a bad idea. This really is a terrible idea from that perspective, from the point of view of safety especially. You have 50,000 gallons of diesel fuel there at any given time. That, you know, accidents happen. And I know that even on the EAF there was no hunting in there, but everybody in this room knows that there are hunters there. You know, stray bullets. We all know this. Even if you have signs on no hunting, there's hunting. So there are people there, and vandals could access this in a way, even if you had cameras 360 degrees, and they could really escape unnoticed by any authorities. So I think it's a sitting duck. I mean, from your perspective, you ought to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, you think that. So those are all things. Those are concerns we share. I mean, we're not gonna build a facility that we think puts anybody in danger. And I think there's discussion about what that constitutes, but I think, you know, like, we wouldn't do that. I don't think any reasonable developer would do that. I don't think that a reasonable town would happen. I think there is the band of what that means, right? And I think that we are working to design the plan. And as we design the plan, part of that will be security will be fire prevention, fire response, spill prevention, spill response. Nothing at this site is unique. It's unique here. This is new here. I understand that point, but there are parts of the project that exist. None of that is unique at all. And there are ways that people developed to mitigate the risks. You know, it'd be irresponsible to say there's zero risk, because that's not true, right? There's risk of all sitting in the room today of some things happening. But we think that it's reasonable to. We think that there are ways to mitigate the risks down to a reasonable measure. We haven't developed those plans yet. We haven't done those studies. But we plan to do those and share them prior to finalizing the project permits.
Could you just kind of real briefly about the mixed zoning and the 117 acres?
Yeah. So 117 acres. I think it's actually, when you put it all together, it's closer to 100 and towards 120 something. It's about 121
altogether.
121. You have these little side parcels here that are part of it. The really short answer is that's what the owner was willing to sell us. So one owner owns all of it. They didn't want us to parse it out. They wanted to sell the whole thing. So we started there, right? What was available was all 3 parcels together. We think that's a reasonable thing. We think it's the transaction negotiated with the owner is that's what we did. We've agreed with the town to designate the remainder of the project for evergreen. We assume that part of our permit conditions will require that, which means that we won't be able to develop it, and if we sell the project, that'll be controlled development. So that right now anybody can build here. I mean, obviously get the permits and that sort of thing. But we're thinking as long as we're building our project, which we've been discussing for the last 2 hours. But we think that we're getting the rest of it to be forever green, which does at least provide some certainty about future development not happening around the site. From a zoning, sorry, I'm still answering questions. From a zoning perspective, you're right, it is 2 different zones. The way the town looks at it, the way I understand it, is that it's by parcel, so the part of the property that we're in is zoned appropriately for our project, but it is, as you point out, adjacent to residential zones, which I don't think would allow this project in those zones. But the part we're in is zoned for what we're doing. Yes?
In reference to what you said about the fire departments and emergency responders, I mean, we're town of Ulster. We're volunteer firefighters. I'm a nurse. We are strained as it is. Now you're saying that, our fire department is responsible for it. And God forbid there is something that leaks and we have these health hazards and issues, which, realistically will happen. What are you going to do for us to assure us that we will have the proper response, emergency responders? I mean, then our taxes go up because now we need more emergency responders. We need more volunteer people. We have a great fire department surrounding us, and they are volunteer members that sacrifice their lives and put their families on hold. And, even our town employees are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. What are you going to do to make sure that we're still protected and we're not running so scarce?
So I think when I know our response plan, our emergency planning, the first step is obviously prevention. So we're going to do a lot to prevent anything from happening. Prevention is not 100%. We have to acknowledge that. So we'll plan for if our prevention doesn't work.
What is your prevention plan?
So we haven't, that's what I'm saying, we haven't developed that. We'll develop it prior to.
How about we don't want a project that needs an emergency plan?
I've heard that response. So we think that the first line of response is on site. So we will have, for the most part, automated systems in place.
You said 4 employees, 24 hours a day. It's not going to happen.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, sorry.
So we will have automated systems in place. They'll be the first plan. So the idea is that if there is a incident, that our systems will respond automatically and immediately by themselves, without an employee there, but they'll monitor heat detection, fire detection, all that kind of stuff, and they'll respond immediately to either remove the risk or minimize its increasing. And then we'll have broader emergency systems on site, so that if those initial mitigation measures don't work, we'll have like our halon systems in the containers. We'll have other large fire suppression systems in the facility itself as our second on-site prevention measure. And then, after both those measures are there, that is when then we work with the locals, and we will make sure that they are trained, and we'll answer their questions and make sure they feel like
they're already excellent trained. Yes. They are highly qualified and trained, as we are. but you're not giving us more manpower. Are you gonna employ more staff up there to make sure that your staff is trained for an emergency situation so that our firefighters don't go out and they're not occupied with your time and monopolizing our time with you?
So I think, let us develop our plans, let us share our plans, and we think that we'll be able to show with our plans that additional staff and additional resources are not needed for the local fire department. But let us get those plans out and we can discuss where the gaps are if there are gaps for that. But I understand what you're saying. I think our intent is not to unduly burden the local emergency responders. I think we can do it without doing that.
They should be included in your plan, don't you think?
Yeah, we will. We'll include them. I mean, that's part of our planning process, coordinating with those departments, those agencies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't quite hear, I think this question was asked earlier, but I didn't hear the answer. Were other sites considered in the town of Ulster and outside the town of Ulster for this?
Yes, we looked at lots of sites. Many we discarded because there were various reasons why they wouldn't work. So the prior reasons were they either didn't have the gas or electric systems on site. So we acknowledge you could build a project without having them on site, but that increases the amount of real estate you need to develop with more linear facilities, which have their own issues. So we decided to focus on sites that had both utilities on site.
So you did not consider other sites?
I haven't finished answering the question, so I'll get there. We have. Okay. I'm telling you the process we went through and the sites we looked at and what we did to screen out sites and why we think this is, of all the sites we looked at, this is the best one. So I'm working through it. So it has the utilities on site. It also has a minimal amount of wetlands and
A lot.
compared to the other sites we looked at.
American architecture in here also.
So compared to the other sites we looked at, it doesn't have as many wetlands. It doesn't have significant wetlands, and it has what our interest here is that the wetlands that are on site, there are wetlands on site. We've delineated them. We have them in maps.
You're talking about this site. I asked you about other sites. Did you look at other places?
Yes, we did.
Where did you look?
First of all, I'm not going to tell you where we looked because you could further, someone else go develop those sites and compete with us. We did look at other sites. We'll talk about the process we went through, but we're not disclosing all the places we looked at because that's part of our proprietary information. We did look at other sites. Did you have more background on that?
I'm the director of real estate, so it's my responsibility to identify the land. It's a Venn diagram. Gas, electric, zoning, a willing seller at a reasonable price.
Okay,
That's the search. I searched throughout the Hudson River Valley. This one made the most sense to us, and that's why we chose it. That's why we opted.
In your research, did it also indicate how it's going to affect the property values?
No. Of course not. Listen, I'm a certified commercial investment member of the Commercial Investment Real Estate. I've done a lot of research on the nature of how projects impact property values. If you show me a study, I'd be happy to review it.
I mean, I appreciate you guys are the businessmen. It is your business. You're here to support that. But when you did all your gas lines, electrical, all this other stuff, this is in a residential area. Any consideration as far as to the community and the impact of our property values?
So our opinion, in our view, and I think that when we get through everything and we can talk through stuff, we think the impacts will be minimal.
I don't believe so.
If you show us a study, we'll be happy to look at it.
Yeah. So I think we will talk about why we think the impacts are minimal, and that's part of the work we'll do. Yes.
So I'm sure, as you're aware, there's a principal aquifer running underneath the property. Do you know who gets their water from that and how they'll be affected if there is a?
So on our list, we have work to do to study the impacts of the aquifer. We haven't finished that work. When it's done, we'll share it. Okay, moving on. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Since you said this is pretty much, you haven't made a decision whether to go forward. All of our opinions, you said, do account for whether you will go forward. Could you humor me before the end of this meeting and take a poll and see if there is, so you as a businessman and all of you involved in doing your study, humor me and take a poll so you are well informed of who wants this project to raise their hand in the room to see. Because
I don't think that's going to advance the conversation. I think it's been very clear.
Well, then our opinions do count, correct?
Yeah. I'm not going to count them though. I think that.
Well, if there is.
It'll be a low number.
Why don't we do it ourselves?
Interesting.
How many
people are interested?
At this
Anybody?
point, based on this information, would oppose
One.
this power plant?
Oppose it?
Opposed. Just to give them
Okay, moving on. So that's not so right.
Where does the energy come from the batteries?
What's that?
Where does the energy come from the batteries? So the batteries have to be charged somehow. So where does that energy come from?
So it comes from either the grid, and I think we think that at least half the time we'll charge off the grid, and it'll come from the gas
It's on the
generator.
grid. If you're choosing it on the grid, that power may be coming from a fossil fuel source, correct?
It actually, frankly, will probably come from a wind or a solar project, because we'll charge when the grid prices are low, and usually in New York, the grid prices are the lowest when it's windy at night.
So it comes back to. That's fine. So now when you release that energy from that battery, are you calculating that into your statistics on emissions?
No. So the emissions calculations is a per megawatt hour calculation, and it does not account for the batteries. So it's the worst case scenario is generating from our generator per megawatt hour. That's the emissions that we're talking about. Okay. So going back here. Okay, so let's see.
Wait a minute, go back to that other.
That's what I was trying to get to. Don't worry. So let me just, we didn't really talk about this slide. So this is, I'll get to the next one. Don't worry, I'm not trying to.
No,
so
I know.
here's zooming in, locating this a little more in case you didn't know where we are. So here is Hudson Valley Mall. Here's Route 9W. Route 32, Frank Sotil. Here's Kohl's, Home Depot, right there. I don't know what that is. Lone Star Steakhouse, and here's Sunrise Park.
Yeah, there's Sunrise
There we
Park.
are.
Yeah,
That's
that's us.
I bet you thought I was going to skip that, didn't you? It's right there. And so that's where we're at, right? And this is the site right here. We say it's off of Frank Sotil Boulevard. I understand what you're saying, that when you're doing kind of as the crow flies, it's not the closest place. Our driveway's gonna be on Frank Sotil Boulevard, so we'll say it's there, but here's a map. This is where it is. There's a distance here, I think it's 700, I think it's 735, but it's on the map back there, the exact number. So that's from the edge of our fence corner, to the property line of the nearest residential property.
680.
680.
It's not 680.
It's in your proposal.
I think we've made the path smaller, so it's farther away. This is our current design. So there's been years.
700, it's still close.
Yeah, no, it's.
House.
I mean, I've been saying, like, I think our original proposal is right. It was in the 600s. We've worked to move this, make the path smaller, and move it. So it's, but I mean, it's
You're still in the panel motion.
Yeah. So here's the site, okay, and we tried to color this to make it easily identifiable. So the green is areas that we are undeveloped, the areas we're not developing. They're currently mostly forested or shrubs. The wetlands, the blue areas here, these lighter, this kind of color blue, are the wetlands on site. We have done an on-site wetland delineation, so these are the actual wetlands as delineated by a wetland guy or gal. And this green, light green here is the right-of-way for Central Hudson's electric line. The yellow line here, this yellow area, is the right-of-way for Central Hudson's underground gas line. Those facilities both exist. These dashed here things are how we're connecting to those. This white thing is the road. Someone earlier asked about gates. We'll probably have at least 2 gates, one down here. We'll design this so that if someone can pull off without getting right to the gate, we'll have a gate preventing people from driving up to the site when it's unmanned, and then there'll probably be a gate right here as well. Obviously, we'll work with the fire department, make sure they have access and all that kind of stuff. And then, let's see, oh yeah, these lighter blue areas, these kind of aqua areas are the stormwater retention and
The swamps.
there won't be swamps. The infiltration areas. So these are the areas that we're building to take stormwater from the project and let it infiltrate. But yeah, those are our manufactured wetlands. And then we'll have one wetland crossing right here. This is this road over. We'll probably do with open bottom culvert, I think. And that's the site. So that's the same. This is the same footprint here as you saw there. It's just now on the map. And this is, so we're saying from here is where we're 7 something away. And this will be on our website, so if you want to download a high resolution version of this, you will be more than free to. Yeah.
Okay, you're building on the top of that ridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you put water on the top of a ridge, you know where it goes, right? Yeah.
Well, so we are designing, so we have a...
What I want to
yeah.
know is how you're going to get it to go into those retention areas without it going, you know, it naturally goes down.
Yeah, so every development project plans for stormwater, and there's very advanced modeling that can figure out if stormwater is going to flow. We'll do grading, so we'll do final site grading to ensure the stormwater goes to where it's supposed to go.
There's also a stream down at the bottom of that ridge that
Yeah.
empties into the, so the
Yeah.
stream and
Yeah.
then empties into the Hudson River.
Yeah, so stormwater is an important part of every project, and we will have a very robust stormwater management plan, and I'm confident we can show how we'll make sure the stormwater goes where we want it to go and not where we don't want it to go. That's a part of every project. The town is very experienced at reviewing those things. There's engineers that are very experienced at designing stormwater systems. It's not unique at all to our project. Every site has challenges. We think we can show how it's going to go where we want it to go.
And is
And we'll show you.
that away from us? Because I have stormwater drains on my property, and I don't want it feeding back to me. I'm
No,
already
it's-
getting condo water.
No, we're not going to have any stormwater going anywhere besides on our property. That's why we're building these infiltration ponds that the stormwater collected infiltrates into the groundwater where we're supposed to go. Okay, moving on. More questions about that?
Is this project going to expand eventually, or is this the...
So the footprint that we're designing for is, we've already agreed with the town, is that we will work with the town to designate the rest of the project area as forever green or undeveloped. So we'll have our footprint that's permitted, the rest of the site, 100 and change acres, we will commit to not develop, and the town won't let us develop it after that.
What's the change of motive? But it is forever green right now.
It's not restricted.
Well,
That's why we can develop it.
It's forever green. You're talking about putting up projects that are going to make, like, you know, it's like a...
It's not forever green now.
It's not forever green. It is already.
No, it's not restricted right now. It's private property with no restrictions on it, from a forever green standpoint. So we're offering to put we're offering to put those legal restrictions on the property going forward. So after our project, the rest of the 100 acres now can be developed for anything is going to be restricted. Okay, so studies. So here's the studies that we're either planning or have completed. We will make sure all of these studies get made available when they're finalized. None of them are final yet, so we're still working on it, but we plan to study all of these areas. I'm not going to go through these right now because they're on our website, they'll be here, but we're planning to do a very robust study. If there are other studies that people think we should do, let us know, put them in the cards, tell us, we'll look at doing them, but we think this will provide a comprehensive picture of the project when it's done. So far, I'm not even going to say. So far, everything we're seeing, we don't think anything that meets the significant impact threshold under New York SEQR law will exist. But we're still studying it, and we'll put that up here. But I understand other peers have different opinions, so let's just leave it there. Like I said, studies are made available, so our intent is to, via our project website, to make sure that once a study's been finalized in the final form, we'll put it on the website for others to look at. The town will obviously have a copy of it. We'll try to make sure we share all of that with it. We're using, we're using expert consultants to do it, so it's not just Chris and I doing studies. We're hiring experts that have done studies in there before and do their studies. We're hosting these volunteer open houses. We'll host more of these as people have questions. We want to try to have a discussion, understanding that we have different opinions of the project, but we want to try to make sure we're available to you. We'll have ongoing outreach. We have a mailing list of people who are either adjacent or within the Sunrise Park neighborhood. We have those addresses, so if you got a letter or a postcard from us, we already have your address. If you want us to stop sending you stuff, let me know, we will, but if you don't, we'll continue to send you things until you tell us to stop. If you want to be on our list for mailing or for email, please sign in here or fill a card out or call us or email us. We're happy to add anyone who wants to be on our list onto our list, and we'll keep you informed about the project as we have major developments. Yeah.
When did you start talking about this project with the town of Ulster?
In November.
Just this past November?
Yep. This is where we consider ourselves early in the development process.
And how does this forum figure into your business model, or was it at the suggestion of the town of Ulster? So
we worked with the town of Ulster and we discussed it. We wanted to make sure that we got public comment early in the process so we can still make changes before we committed to certain parts of the project. So this is not required. The town and us and the town decided to do it together because we thought it was a good forum for people to come and talk about the project versus a formal public town meeting, which we'll have as we get through the permit process. We thought we'd do this in advance to provide a more informal opportunity for us to hear the comments. Okay, Town of Ulster is the lead under Circa. Yeah, did you
some of the media that covered this indicated combined heat and power, CHP. Okay, then that was not true. Okay, thank you.
Oops, back up. So the Town of Ulster received the CEQA lead, and in addition to all the stuff we're doing to put information out there, there is a whole regulatory public participation process that we can tell you about, or the town can tell you about, where you have a legal right to participate. This is all in addition to that. So next steps, we're wrapping up here, and I might need to take a drink of water, but then we'll be around for questions after that. So we really want to hear your comments. We've heard a lot today. I understand that a lot of people here have no interest in the project at all being built and want to convince us otherwise. We're happy to hear more about why you're concerned with the project. We want to know your questions, that kind of stuff. Talk to us in person, but a better way to convey your thoughts and questions of the project is let us know in writing so we can make sure we have a record of it and we can respond to it. So we have comment cards, we have an email address. Talk to us tonight as much as you want, but please do provide it that way either now, tonight on these comment cards, or by email to us. That way we can make sure we don't forget about it, because there'll be a lot of folks who talk to you tonight and it's going to be a busy night. And then studies and updated plans, as we have them finalized, we'll put them on the website. So we're always making minor adjustments, and then we have major revisions, we'll post them to our website. That's the place to look for the latest and greatest. Questions?
Just a comment. You were asking whose idea was this in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And you said it was both. In the EAF C2, it was written that the town suggested this site to you.
I have to look at that. That's not what happened.
Well, that's what's on the board. You're the applicant.
Yeah, let's look at that together, because I don't think that's true. So it's either put it wrong in the EAF, which I hope didn't happen, or yeah, we'll look at it. I mean, I think we can look at it with the town and see what happens. But it was a site that was Mike authorized.
It doesn't make you not the applicant, but it's just like, where did this originate?
Yeah, and so that's really confusing, just to make it
C2.
Yeah, but we'll look at that, because I think as Mike described, we had a process that was completely organic ourselves to find these sites, so I don't know.
I'm just expanding on the question.
Yeah, when did you identify this site within your company?
I mean, we started looking out here a couple of years ago, and started looking at sites. It didn't work economically then, so we kind of waited on it, and now as better technologies come around, we've found this is the right time to come here. So we've known about the site for a while. We haven't actively been developing it, which is we haven't had this discussion because we've now started actively developing the site. But it's been our portfolio.
You haven't had conversations with the town of Ulster prior to November?
We've had informal conversations like any applicant would understand what their zoning rules are and that sort of stuff. But like a developer, we have portfolio sites all over, and so we don't. This meeting wouldn't have been very useful if we knew for a fact we weren't going to advance development. In November was when we decided to start advancing development of the project, which is why we made our first application to the town and initiated the formal process with the town and then started these conversations. So we have that's the origination of how this all happened.
But how long have you been talking to the town about this?
I think our initial conversation was right before we signed the option, but again, we option a lot of land. We don't develop every project.
And when did you option land?
2015 or 16.
Yeah, it's in the public. I mean, it's recorded.
Yeah, it's a recorded document.
Yeah.
What's the decision-making process? How does the final decision get made?
Is there a Circa expert?
Secra.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's local land use approvals and then seeker findings that need to be made consistent with that. So there's a number of permits. There's also DEC permits that have to be issued, and so there'll be local and state permits that will be needed for the project. And I think one Army Corps permit.
Is the town giving this a positive declaration under seeker or a negative declaration?
They haven't made a decision yet.
Supervisor Quigley stated publicly that there would be a positive declaration. It's not formal, but he stated that publicly.
Okay, so,
One more question. What, in your business plan, what are you thinking that you're going to be breaking ground?
well, I mean, we have to get a permit first. So I think once we have permits, it's probably a 9 to 12 month construction cycle once we have all the permits.
So it will take 9 to 12 months to complete it, right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
But when is the 9 months begin?
So once we have all of our permits, we know. Yeah, once we know for sure the project can be built, we can't build with a permit. So we
projections.
Yeah, and well, in New York, this process is very unpredictable. So I think we don't know when it's going to be done. I mean, I think if you look at the rules, it could be done in a few months. But because of probably public involvement, it may take longer. So I don't know.
See, that's what doesn't feel like straight up, you know, because there's so many projections you've given us on these screens, which you don't really know about. But yet you're not.
Maybe I can tell you an answer, but I'm telling you I don't know for sure. I think we could say so.
Starting this project in 3 months.
I think so. First of all, we don't think we can start on-site construction until at least November 2018.
Which is
11
months.
10, 11. Right, but we can't do that until we have permits. So if we don't get permits, we can't do that.
Thank you for answering my question.
So that's where we're at. But that's the earliest we can do that. Okay. So it's
We got a question, excuse me.
here. Yeah. Okay. I just need to check where I'm at, and I'll answer your question. I promise. Hold on a second. Okay. Yes.
My house is directly across of the entrance to the wooded area on Risley Street.
Yep.
When there's downpours of rain, we have 2 basins out front. Once they fill, they can't go further through the old piping that's there because that was never expanded. So what's going to happen now, when you're going to build in there, and the water already has no place to go.
So we're not planning to change any of the landscape that abuts that development. So I don't think the water will change. We can look at it if that's a concern.
But you're not going to, the drain pipe, I'm calling it, underground, has never changed. They never changed that. They put more basins. The water's got no place to go. The problem is in the land across the problem is because it wasn't pitched right many years ago.
So we plan to design our facility to contain all of the stormwater on our site. And there's guidelines about how to do that. We plan to follow those and have them on our stormwater plans.
But is your building preparation gonna do something to the...
I think you're talking about up by the housing development, we don't plan to have any earthwork anywhere close to that.
Well, it's back further where the water's, we're just a little pond back in there.
Yeah, we don't, so none of our, this is a bad idea. So none of our, so beyond this white area and this, so this area plus the batteries here, we don't plan to have any significant earthwork outside of there. We'll have some related to storm retention here and probably some in between, but we're not going to be reshaping anything in here, for example. We're not going to have any impacts there with the on-the-ground equipment. Yes?
Are you planning on building on a slab or are you going blast?
We're planning right now to use a slab. I think we are still finishing our geotechnical reports, which will determine that for sure, but nothing that we need to do needs to go all that deep, so I don't think blasting is required. And the data we have so far does not indicate blasting is required. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that there are so many comments in this room, so many really important questions that once this goes ahead to the seeker process, I think everybody in this room has the potential to make comments that will have to be responded to by the DEC. If it was only comments from the people in the room, hundreds and hundreds of comments would be generated. So I'm just saying, let's all remember all the questions that are being raised about the potential harm that this project could be to your house, to general, so that we, stay energized and make sure those comments are submitted during the seeker process. And I'm sure organizers will be letting everyone know how to do that.
Yeah,
the one good thing that is happening here, we have a positive deck under seeker. Your questions, anybody's questions will be written down and they will be addressed not only by the DEC but by the company.
Right.
And this is going to come out in a finding statement. And if your question is not, if you write it in and give it to them and it's not there, you can object at that point in time. So that process will, that's a big thing that the town has done, because up until 5 years ago, we never saw a positive declaration in the town of Ulster. And our leaders now have seen the light, so to speak, and this positive declaration is a good step forward. I'm not saying that the power plant is a good thing, but, and just to correct you, it could be 5 years before you stop, because the last time I did a secret process to stop a bad project, we stopped it for 5 years. So just keep the tenacity here.
Yes. 5 years, their battery project alone will just be profitable, and they can ditch the gas in 5 years.
I mean, I've worked on wind projects, Western New York, that have 7-8 year secret processes.
So just be prepared. It's a long.
It's interesting that both projects have the same volume of comments. Okay, so this is we've gone through this. Here is our website, and like I mentioned, the slide deck from tonight. Our posters will be up there tonight at some point, and all our contact information is there. You can contact us that way. You can say after all kind of stuff. We're trying to at least answer your questions. You may not like our answers, but we're trying to answer your questions and respond to them. That's the best way to do it.
One thing I could ask is, if at the next informational meeting you have more exact figures. I know you have a process to go through, but I had asked, I think I talked to you, Peter. I'd asked about emissions. You don't have those. They're very important to this group.
Yeah, so we're trying to evolve, so we're trying to have meetings early on and we'll keep doing it. I understand.
That's what starts this bittering when you don't have an answer for that.